Hello, I'm Trevor.
And I'm Laura.
We have a deep passion for helping couples build strong, lasting relationships that truly thrive.
So we created Tools for Marriage.
Tangible, practical tools couples can start using right away.
Wherever you are in the world.
And wherever you are in your relationship.
We truly believe these tools can improve any marriage.
And maybe we put a few divorce lawyers out of business along the way. Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Tools for Marriage. Laura and I are very excited to be with our special guest today. I'm going to let you give a little bit of bio, but I want to, I'm sure it's pretty lengthy because of the things that you've done over time.
You're as old as I am, so you have a lengthy bio.
Come on now. We only nice things about you, right?
Yes.
So this is our friend, Pastor Eric Hurd. So Eric, welcome to the Tools for Marriage podcast. We're excited to sit down with you. We know you have a real heart for marriage. So maybe give us a little bit of a bio and how we kind of got to this particular place that we're sitting right now.
Okay. So I've lived in Orange County my whole life. Lived in San Clemente for 5 years, Laguna Beach for 13 years. And I came to Christ when I was 18.
Okay.
And I was just, I was a horrible person in the beginning. And Christ came into my life. I was discipled, and a year later I became a pastor. I've been a pastor now 51 years.
Wow.
And worked at two great churches, Evangelical Free Church of Fullerton, Chuck Swindoll, and then 27 years at Mariners. And but in those 51 years, I met this gal at Biola College, and it was a college at the time, and that was Debbie Hurd. I spotted her across the gym, and in my head I said, I'm marrying that woman. Yeah.
Wow.
And then I basically after chapel followed her. They call it stalking now.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And I literally did. I went to the library, sat next to her, went to the cafeteria, sat next to her.
Yeah.
And got a date, and we got married May 17th, 1980. So we've been married 45 years.
45 years.
We have two kids, Johnny, who's 37, and then Crystal, who's 35, and I got three grandkids, a son-in-law, Michael.
Wow.
And so I've had an incredible life.
Yeah, for sure. That's amazing. And so right now you sit as a pastor at Mariners, right? And you kind of are sort of over that marriage ministry. I know you do a lot of stuff with weddings, which we want to get into a little bit. You do some stuff with pre-marrieds, and then you do some stuff when couples are having a little bit of trouble. You're kind of one of the go-to guys, yeah?
Well, kind of the weird thing is I've had 19 jobs at Mariners. Evidently, I'm not good at one. But I've had so many different positions. And when our present senior pastor came, he just said, hey, we're just going to give you the title, you're over all pastoral ministries. I did start the marriage ministry and built the philosophy and worked every aspect of marriage. But right now, my focus is on the restore side. So I don't oversee the marriage ministry, but I work on the whole area of really renewing, restoring, and rebuilding marriages that have just hit the wall.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, for sure. And so I know you're sometimes involved with couples in terms of the front end, in terms of their weddings and things, but as part of the restore effort, I imagine these are people that are at the church already saying, listen, things aren't going well, and those will potentially get funneled your direction?
Yeah, kind of an interesting, I love the question. The marriage ministry is my passion. And now I have a lot of responsibilities, but one of them is not the marriage ministry. I do that on my own time.
I see.
And it really isn't formal. It really comes through the relationships, because being at a church 27 years, you get to know a lot of people. And so I'll have somebody go, hey, I've got this neighbor, or I've got this friend, or whatever it may be. And I deal with marriages at every stage. Now I do a lot of weddings. And I've done 1,358 weddings.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I do premarital with each couple because I want to prepare them for what they're about to encounter.
Right.
And so I do still the prepare side, but then the restore side is incredibly fulfilling.
So we got to pause for a minute on this 1,300 weddings. So do you have some sort of Google sheet that you just keep adding on to with every wedding that you do?
No, I'm not that smart. No, I'm old school folders.
Okay.
So I have a folder for each couple I marry, so that's why I know how many. Wow. And so if I make a lifetime commitment to the couple. So when I do the wedding, now it's not a guarantee, because they can screw up the wedding or the marriage.
Yeah, right.
But I make a commitment. So I have couples that will come back to me and say, hey, what you said did happen and we're not doing well. And so I'm able to get in their folder, kind of look at my notes, and then figure out, okay, let's go. And so that's why I know how many.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's amazing.
I'm trying to get to 1,500. I figure, it's like sports. You get to that milestone.
Trying
you go,
to get there.
I quit now.
I did it.
Well, he's the best. So if you need to have somebody get married, this is the guy. So let's get you to 1,500.
Probably the part of doing weddings that is probably one of my favorite. It's a rarity, but I've done 18 remarriages where couples divorced.
I see. Wow.
And I find out about it, and then I pose the question, tell me why you divorced.
Yeah.
And they'll share with me. I said, you didn't need a divorce. You just didn't know what you were doing.
Yeah.
Like, I love the name of your podcast, Tools for Marriage.
Yeah.
Because it's a tricky thing, because when you first get married, kind of like my own story, is that I thought in my head, how hard could marriage be? I love her, she loves me.
Sure, that's
we're
all you
attracted to each other. I'm so good looking.
Right.
And
of course.
I notice you're laughing. No. That hurts. Truth hurts. But in all seriousness, I honestly didn't know what I was doing because I never saw a healthy marriage.
Yeah.
And so I'll ask the spouse, hey, where's your other spouse, your former spouse? And they'll tell me, and I said, hey, if they're not married, would you want to talk and see if we might reconcile it?
Wow.
And so I've done 18 of those.
That's
Just did
amazing.
one a month ago.
That is wonderful.
And it's exciting because, like, one couple was divorced 2.5 years, and when I found out, I went, oh my gosh, you guys didn't know what you were doing.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we do a reconciliation, which is, I call it leveling the playing field, building a strong foundation. Then you build the marriage they didn't have, the skills that they didn't have, because they can't go back to the same marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, one couple was divorced 22 years.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I got to do the reconciliation and the rebuilding. Yeah.
Now, when you talk about, people who have already divorced, it feels like, no one gets married and says we're going to get divorced. This is not the goal, right? You're thinking we're going to be married forever.
They'd be sociopaths.
Yeah, it seems that way. And I've probably married a few, but I'm just saying.
I haven't run into the sociopath.
Okay, good. But so it's got to get to a point where they just feel that this irreconcilable differences. We cannot make it, right? And if you said couples that I find out are separated and I step in and we work towards reconciliation, I would say, well, that makes a little more sense because that feels a little bit like things aren't going well, so much so that we need to separate. But this has gone beyond that. Divorce papers have been filed. They're usually living in completely separate states or at least places, right? Mm-hmm. And you find out about it, and the marriage doctor shows up and says, wait a minute, we can fix this injury. I mean, tell me, I'm just curious to know when you see these cases, what is it that went wrong, and how does that get back on track in a way that you can have these married again?
Okay, so I'm going to reverse the question and go at you two.
Okay.
Have you ever run into an issue, a conflict that a couple's had where you go, oh no, this can't be reconciled? I don't like the term irreconcilable differences. Right. I've never seen that in the Bible.
Right.
But we come up with it because, even say in the field of therapy, and by the way, I love therapists, MFTs, all of that. But, like in sports, in business, everybody has a ceiling. In other words, their capacity, their ability. So I've had couples who said, our therapist said, you know what, we probably shouldn't have married, and you guys, it'll never work. And I go, really? I said, talk to me, and I'll do an assessment. And I go, okay, I get it. And I'm not being critical of the therapist, but what I realize is the human will is the strongest thing in the planet. That's why in Romans 8, it says the same power that raised Jesus from the dead reigns in our mortal body. Why? Because our will is so strong, and we're stubborn. So when I work with a couple, like say a couple that I'm going to do a reconciliation, here's what I'll say to them. If you will humble yourselves and do everything that God tells you to do, I've never seen a marriage not turn around. But if you're not going to humble yourself, I'm not going to waste your time or my time.
Right.
So it's not me. I'm not like the love doctor, the marriage doctor.
Right.
I simply am a pastor. I do pastoral counseling. And honestly, I've never run into a thing where I go, oh, that'll never work. Yeah. Wow. I seriously, that's why I ask you. Right. You couldn't come up with one.
No.
No. Yeah. But again, if a couple believes, my spouse will never change, they'll never confess their wrongdoing. Like I had this guy who goes, my wife never confesses when she's wrong. I said, wow, you must be pretty tough on her. I said, because she doesn't feel safe to confess.
Yeah.
Now, I can be a mediator, and we'll do a reconciliation. And sometimes when a spouse will say, oh, my husband or my wife will never confess, I'll go, well, we'll see. And sometimes they write the best letters of confession.
That's amazing.
Wow, that's incredible.
What about like infidelity or abuse? I mean, how do you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, and that's serious, okay?
Yeah.
And that's where sometimes I'll use the professional community because there's a lot to work through. But even in that, and again, typically in churches, and certainly for decades, the church would say the only causal reason for divorce is adultery. Now, when Jesus said that, and I'm not playing with words or redefining things, he used the greatest offense in a marriage to say, don't just willy-nilly get divorced. Like when Jesus said Moses used to give a certificate of divorce and God would permit it. Why? Because of the hardness of men's hearts. Okay, so divorce happens. God will allow it. He doesn't want it to. But even in cases of adultery, betrayal, I've seen couples completely turn around. And I will say, you can explain an affair, you never excuse it. So oftentimes, like I had a man who said his wife, stone cold after they got married, would not move at intimacy. And for years, he was going without any intimacy. Now, my heart went out to him, found out later she had been molested and never told him.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was able to get her into a therapist who walked through, brought healing, and they were able to reconcile their marriage, and intimacy was opened up. Like I say to a couple, at any point in the journey I'm with, if you guys decide to divorce, that's not my decision. I never counsel divorce. I don't like divorce any more than God does because I know what it does. My mother was married 3 times and my dad was married 3 times. So I've seen nothing but marriage and divorce, and I see what it does. Yes. And I was the product, or I always call children of a divorce orphans. We never asked for it. It just happened. Yeah.
Wow. And so when you say that you do a little bit of an assessment because you're trying to figure out kind of what went wrong, whether they're just troubled or whether they're already divorced and maybe looking for reconciliation, what is that tool that you're using? Are you doing Symbis with them, the Save Your Marriage Before It Starts, with a married couple, or are you using something else?
Yeah, I use the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
That's not I'm not spiritualizing.
That's amazing.
Because anybody that intercedes for other people, it is an incredible privilege because you're bringing God right into the center of a person's life and whatever they're struggling with. Well, there's times where I'll say, what is it that you're asking God to do? And when they'll share with me, there are times the Holy Spirit will reveal something they're not even saying.
I see. Wow.
So in marriage assessment, the 10,000 hour rule.
Right. Yeah.
The longer you do something. Well, I've been working with couples for 40 years and I will just sit and listen. Sometimes I'm writing notes. And the Holy Spirit will just illumine something. Like I'll tell you something I'm very sensitive to, and that is spousal abuse. I'd say 95% of the abuse is usually the man toward the woman. But when you see a sin or a brokenness in somebody else, it's usually because that was in you. And in the earlier part of my marriage, without truly knowing it, I was abusive to my wife. I was condescending, argumentative. I used anger as a tool to get her to stop something or whatever. And so I can spot abuse in a heartbeat. And usually the woman won't bring it up because she's afraid of the consequences. But I can feel it. And just by the way the man's talking, you look at nonverbals, and you're just watching and you're going, oh, and so the Holy Spirit will reveal it.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to spiritualize it, but it's a very important part of the assessment because, the old adage in medicine, you can't treat what you don't diagnose. So, sometimes, like therapists in their modality will oftentimes pose a lot of questions, trying to get to know the couple and then try to figure out, okay, in light of that, where do we need to go?
Right.
My assessment's about 45 minutes.
I see. Yeah. Meaning that, partially because of your expertise and things you've seen over the years, and partially or, completely because of the Holy Spirit within you, right? He's there going, here's where we need to go, and revealing things to you that they may not be revealing to you.
That's it. Because we all have brokenness, but we also have blindness. And sometimes when we're in relationship, blindness, just the term.
Yeah.
I don't see it. Like my wife actually said, "You're abusive." And I'm looking at her. I'm going, what? Because see, I grew up and my dad, my mom and dad split up when I was 4.5. And my dad actually abused my mom regularly. And as kids saw it. And it was traumatic. And he left the day he ran my mother through a wall. I thought she was dead. Oh. And then a year later, she marries a Marine who has PTSD, and he was abusive to her, abusive to me, and so I grew up around abuse. And what typically happens is you're growing up, you normalize unhealthy behavior. And so when I married my wife, I had told her, "Hey, I will never abuse you." In my head, physically. But I used every other form, and I don't excuse it, but I was completely blind to it. And by the way, and this is what's really tricky, Song of Solomon, we've been through a series at Mariners, and you hear pastors teach it, and oftentimes they'll catch that marital love, intimacy, is built off of attraction. Like, I know this will shock you, but you tend not to marry somebody you think is ugly because you feel really sorry for them. You marry because you're attracted to them. Yeah. Then you remember your first conversation? I'll never forget, I was at Coco's. I was a college student, so I had no money. Yeah. And I drove an AMC Gremlin. But my wife was still willing to get in the car. But I will never forget the first conversation going, "Oh, this woman's amazing." Yeah. Well, you've heard of the term 7-year itch. Well, that's the average time it takes for a couple to screw up a marriage. Now, I'm a professional marriage wrecker because it only took me a year and a half.
Right. Yes. Boom, right like that.
But here's the thing I've learned, over the 40 years of working with couples, is that every bit of brokenness and blindness shows up in marriage, and that's what throws couples off. They don't expect it. Like my wife, she saw me as a leader. I was a pastor. I was up in front. I'm a prayer warrior. Kids love me. Parents love me. I was a youth pastor. Yeah. Once again, I was really good looking. Yeah, I can see the smile. And but at least she was attractive.
There you go.
I don't need you guys to be attractive.
I think it was the AMC Gremlin. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying. I thought about writing a book that cars that youth pastors actually own. Oh yeah, really I had a Monza Corvair. I had a '59 Rambler Nash. I mean, I had the ugliest cars ever, and still do. Anyway, no complaints. So again, it's really tricky as couples get into marriage, and it starts to unravel. And here's the thing that couples don't realize either, and that is, remember I joked that I haven't met the spouse that's a sociopath? Okay, typically when we're hurt in marriage because our brokenness and blindness shows up, it's crazy how we'll begin to judge and criticize. We act as if our partner is intentionally hurting us. Yeah. And so what we do is we retaliate. And this is where it gets really ugly, because all of a sudden that foundation of peace and love and joy and hope and building a legacy, everything you dreamed about starts to fade because the resentment and the bitterness starts to set in. And this is where I feel oftentimes modern therapy misses something very important spiritually. And that is, remember when Jesus said, "Don't build your house on sand, for when the storms of life come, the house is destroyed." On the contrast, build your house upon the rock. That when the storms come, the house remains standing. Well, use it for a metaphor of marriage. What's the foundation that's rock? Peace. See? And if resentment and bitterness starts to get in, and this is when I'm doing an assessment, I'm just going, it's set in, that ugly little thing called bitterness and resentment. And here's the thing, you can go to all the marriage matters, all the counseling you want, you can go to seminars and conferences and read books. Honey, read this book, it'll help you. Yeah, I read it, you need this. And the guy goes, yeah, right. Well, here's the thing is, it'll never work. Never. Because resentment and bitterness has already made its way in. And it will sabotage every effort a couple makes. And couples don't see it. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
So literally, I set out a path, but 9 times out of 10, we start off with a biblical reconciliation. You have to reestablish peace and an ownership of what I've done. Because so oftentimes, why is the second most known verse in the Bible Matthew 7:1? What do non-believers, people outside the church, accuse Christians of? Judgment.
Yes.
Yeah. And yet Jesus says, do not judge lest you be judged. And then he says, for if you judge, you'll be judged by the same measure, which is spectrum. So whatever I see in my spouse is in me to one degree or another. And what did Jesus say? Quit looking at him or her.
Right.
You first take the log out of your eye.
Plank out of your eye.
Yeah, exactly.
Before you look at that speck of sawdust.
Exactly.
Right?
But what do couples do?
Yeah.
They judge the other.
Yeah.
And if I in my head, I go, man, if Debbie wasn't this, if she would be on time, if she didn't spend so much money, if she would clean the house the way oh man, I was just judging her. And amazing, and all that judgment, she never changed.
Yeah.
All the criticism, all the anger.
So much criticism and she didn't change. It makes no
Okay,
sense.
now this is really what I love about God's word is sometimes it like slaps you across the head. Like I was an anger monger. I was abusive. And I remember reading out of James 1, let everyone be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. And then it says, for the anger of man never achieves God's purposes. And I read that, I went, oh my gosh. Every time I ever yelled at Debbie, she never thanked me. She never said, man, when you yell, I am so drawn to you. I want to be intimate with you now. Never. And so why was I using anger? Yeah.
So what changed? So that was happening. What changed that trajectory?
Yeah. Well, to my pain, and it's emotional because Debbie had every right. And by the way, I know abuse is an assailing of the marriage covenant. I promised to love her. I promised to protect her, and I was the one attacking her. We separated. But we were so poor, we separated in our house. We didn't have meals together. There was no intimacy. There was no conversation. Because wisely and beautifully, she said, you're abusive, which I didn't understand. And she said, you better get your act together. And man, having watched my family, I just wept because I had this dream, this prayer that I would have a family with her and because my family was so screwed up and I destroyed it. Yeah. And so I started reading every book I could on marriage. I went to counseling, group counseling, intensives. I interviewed couples who had been married 30, 40, 50 years. And after 8 months, I go, oh my gosh, I could not have been doing it worse. And so I came back at her, but I had a very different heart. God, this is where it gets really emotional because it's only God that can change a heart.
Yeah.
Only Him. And all He requires is humility. That's it. And man, I was humble, and I've written a book on it. No, I'm just kidding. And,
You should.
Yeah, right. The minute you write that book, you are not humble. But I came back and. In James it says, so confess your sins to one another and pray for one another so what? You might be healed. I wrote a letter of confession to her of what I had done. And I shared it with her and pled for her to forgive me. But I did ask, I had this long list. I said, is there any other way that I may have hurt you that I didn't right? Because again, blindness. And she said, you're really argumentative. Well, I wasn't about to say, no, I'm not. Prove the point. And so I wrote it down, and I said, that's not going to be me. Because when you write a letter of confession, you now have your job description. By God's strength, remember that same power that raised Jesus from the dead? Like people hear my story, and they go, no. Because I even remember when Deb and I were having trouble, I said, people at church really like me. And she said, they don't live with you. I go, oh. And she was right, because you usually put on your best face when you're out in public.
Right.
It's behind the scenes, away from everyone, that the true self comes out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was God's doing. I am forever grateful. She had every right to leave me because of the abuse, but she didn't. And so 45 years later, I've got my legacy in front of me. Man, did I say I had grandkids?
Yeah.
I have pictures. Can I?
Yes.
I won't show you the pictures.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, it's interesting to me because one of those things is that awareness, right? Someone saying, look, this is the area in which you're blind, whether this is an accountability partner, a pastor, a good friend, or whether it's the Holy Spirit convicting you to say, this is what's going on and this needs to be taken care of. But sometimes change is hard, right? Because like you say, you didn't have some good models on how it might look to act respectfully or to not be verbally abusive or whatever. And so certainly the Holy Spirit can help transform and change your heart. But when you sit down with these couples and some of those light bulbs start to go off and they realize there's some personal responsibility, it's not all their fault suddenly, right?
Right.
Then what is that key to do that 180?
Yeah.
I got to change this, and this. How do you really affect
working
that
on
change?
the right thing.
Yeah.
What's really impeding? Like I'll share with you, there's certain things that are priorities. Like if I've got a person with mental health issues, like I will regularly have a couple where one of the spouses is bipolar. Okay. Well, what do I know about mental health? Is your brain trumps your will every time. If you're not under proper supervision and medication, all the willpower in the world isn't going to change things.
Yeah, lifting yourself up by your bootstraps.
So I'm not going to bypass if I've got somebody with bipolar or some other, borderline, whatever it may be. I've got to deal with that mental health issue first. And again, that's where I'm so grateful for the therapeutic community, psychiatrists, all of that. So I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not going to give medication.
Right.
Yeah. So that's one that you really have to deal with. Where there's addiction, like I happen to have a detox treatment company, and addiction's another one that if you're living with an alcoholic or a drug user, again the will is stifled. They're not going to change, and it's like an affair. That's their love, and I have to deal with addicts all the time. But I was a drug addict, and I was a drug dealer. And they can't get it past me. Like, well, I only drink a little bit, and I'm looking at the spouse going, no. Yeah. So there are certain priority things you have to deal with. Okay. Now I'll go back to the thing of resentment and bitterness, but that is a spiritual matter. That's really easy if the couple's willing to follow my lead and be reconciled. Because I'll say, hey, I'm going to have you write a letter of confession, no excusing, blaming, or minimizing. And it's two categories of sin. Sins of commission, what have you done that's unraveled this marriage? Sins of omission, what did you not do that could have brought healing, peace, restorate? What are the things you didn't do? Like, did you pray for your spouse? As a husband, did you serve your wife? Did you protect her? Did you provide? And so they write a letter of confession and we do a reconciliation. By the way, it's the highest calling in the Christian life. Yeah, people would say, no, it's worship, or serving or generosity.
You're saying confession is the highest calling of the Christian
reconciliation.
life. Reconciliation.
And I'll go back to Matthew chapter 5. Okay. Remember when Jesus was using that rabbinic method? You've heard it was said, but I say to you, that was just a rabbinic method.
Right.
In the Old Testament, thou shalt not commit murder. And most of us go,
right.
Check. I haven't killed anybody. I'm good. And he said, wait a minute. Have you ever called your spouse Raka, which means empty-headed or fool? You idiot. Oh, Lordy, I did. I use names. He goes, now you get it, Eric. There's a spectrum. And then this is where people miss it. And that's verses, I think it's 24, 25, where he says, if you go to the altar of God and there you're going to present your offering, which the Greek word for offering can be your worship. It can be your tithe. It can be your service, whatever it might be. And there you remember, my brother has something against me. We'll just insert spouse.
Yeah.
He says, lay down your offering. I don't want it. Don't give me your worship. See, I look at the church very differently. I see couples, and I know their marriages are going, they're violating that. because they're angry at each other, and yet they got their hands up and they're worshiping, and I'm going, no. And he says, go and be reconciled, then come back and present your offering. Whoa, it's the highest calling in the Christian life. Because how did Jesus, or how did God reach us? Peace through Christ. He said, let's bring peace in our relationship. Now we can build intimacy. So he starts off with peace. In marriage, your job is to keep the peace.
Yeah.
And couples don't do it well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So then when you take a couple and you are pouring into them before they get married, you're obviously going through the Symbis assessment, but you also obviously are bringing your wealth of expertise, your own experience to the table. What would you say are the one or two things that you are just so passionate about that you're like, look at me, like, get this. Yeah. And it's really going to help you guys. Obviously you can look at it and go, everything's important, but what are those one or two things that you just feel so strongly about that a young couple needs to grab hold of to set the right trajectory for their relationship?
Well, again, where I'm going to go at is, what does God care most about?
Yeah.
And when he sets up the foundation of a healthy marriage, the four, if you will, cornerstones of a healthy marriage, he says in Genesis, he said, a man will leave his father and mother, even as a woman will leave her father and mother. It's not an issue of physically leaving. And certainly you don't want to live with your parents when you get married, right? So it's not the physical leaving, it's how you leave. And this is where I didn't see that coming, is that the way I left, it wasn't with honor. I didn't take the good things I saw in my parents' marriage, but I also didn't reconcile the bad things. And you've heard the issue, family of origin. And we say it and we go, family of origin. Right. Well, here's what happened in me. I normalized unhealthy behavior. I didn't stop it at that generation. In Exodus 20, where it says, and the sins of the father will visit the second and third generation. Well, my anger, control, abuse showed up in our marriage. So what I tell couples is, you guys really need to reckon with what you experienced growing up. You need to be open of the things that you feel like your parents did well and bring that into your marriage. But man, you got to talk about the things that you saw that really weren't healthy. They argued incessantly about money. They were not generous. They weren't open in hospitality, whatever it may be. But you better talk about it. So I want to make sure they do that. The second thing he says, and cleave to his wife. And so, I get a lot of marriages where it's a second marriage or a third marriage. And what I say, and even if their parents divorced, I said, the recidivism, in terms of kids divorcing because their parents did, pretty high. But I said, but you're not a victim. What I'm asking you to do, and what God's asking you to do, is to realize this is a covenant. This is for keeps, not a contract. There's no renegotiation. I said, so when you walk into marriage, here's what I want you to recognize. There is never a problem you will ever face that you can't get through. None. In 40 years of marriage work, I've never gone, no, you guys.
This one's too big.
This one's too big. And so, because any problem, if you get at the root at it, like I had a couple where the husband wanted to change genders. And so I didn't get reactive. Obviously, the wife's devastated. And we talked through how long he had struggled with his gender issues. I said, had you ever talked with anybody? He said, no. I said, well, I have a friend of mine who's a male gender specialist. He's amazing with men. And I said, now, let me have you read some articles on transgender. Take a look at it, because you need to have your eyes wide open. But at the same time, I want you to go see this counselor. And he did. And he changed his mind. And it would have devastated his kids, him, the wife, everything. So yeah, I've had some challenging ones. But again, when you get at the root, there's nothing in front of any couple that they can't work through. And what I tell them is, be careful of this. Your tendency, especially if it's a severe conflict, is to attack the person and not focus on the problem. And I see that day in and day out. So this thing of leave your father, mother, cleave. And by the way, the Hebrew word for cleave, it's the only time it's used.
Become a
Scripture.
butcher. Become a butcher, right?
Yeah,
Is that what they're talking about?
Let's not use
not
weapons.
cleaver. Oh,
Let's
okay.
not talk about cleavers.
Sorry, maybe I misunderstood.
Wrong cleave.
Got it.
That's
You
for
can define
meat.
it then.
That's
Oh,
for
okay,
meat.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not about cannibalism.
Okay.
Yeah. But the word cleave, only time it's used in Scripture. And it's literally the idea of taking two pieces of paper together and gluing them with no intent of separating. So the first cornerstone is separation from your parents in a healthy way. The second is permanence. Recognizing marriages for keeps. We're going to keep focused on the problems when we have them and resolving them. By the way, number one skill I train in with couples, I've trained hundreds and hundreds of couples. Conflict resolution. So it's kind of like budgeting. You go through elementary school, junior high, high school, college. Did you ever have a finance class?
Yeah, I know.
No. When you graduate from high school and you go into college, the credit card company just goes, here you are.
Right.
It's heroin.
Yeah.
Get hooked.
Right.
Well, same thing, when it comes to conflict resolution.
Right.
You don't have any class. And typically your parents, if I do a marriage seminar, I'll say, how many of you ever had your parents, because they're so good at it, say, son, let me show you how to do conflict resolution. Because your mom and I are so good at it.
Right. Yeah. Nobody says.
Nobody.
Yeah. Exactly.
But it's the number one skill. Because here's the thing. If you can resolve a conflict, you keep the peace. Which then leads to the third cornerstone, and the two of them shall become one. See, like in our family, it's team herd. It's my wife and I, kids. Marriage is the most beautiful display of the Godhead. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, husband, wife, child. And that's why it's so sacred. That's why you don't treat it lightly. That's why, the writer of Hebrews said, keep the wedding bed undefiled, for neither fornicators nor adulterers will enter the kingdom of heaven. Why? Marriage is covenant. Like when you ask people, what's marriage? People don't even, they go, of two people together.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's covenant. The most important thing at a wedding is the verbal vows. The second is the consummating. And this is where most couples, cohabitation has escalated unbelievably. About 80% of the couples I deal with that are not, first, they're living together, even older couples. And I go, so help me to understand how God kind of said, go that direction. Because when a man and a woman are virgins and they marry, there's a verbal covenant, but then there's the sexual covenant. Because when a man penetrates a woman, he breaks her hymen and a little blood comes forth. And blood is the sign of covenant.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And so to haphazardly sleep with people, like when couples are living together, I say, you're just playing house. You get in the cart before the horse. And I said, and usually there's unbelievable problems in cohabitation because there's no permanence. So what is marriage? Separation, it's permanence, but it's oneness. And your job is to maintain the oneness. That's your job. It's now team herd. It's we. And for us men, it's much harder. You women are way better at relational things. You're the caretakers of relationship. Usually the wife is the one dragging her husband who doesn't want to see me because we don't like to fail. And I understand that. But usually whatever problems in marriage, there can't be oneness because we're not together. That's why conflict resolution becomes so important. And what's the fourth cornerstone? And the two of them were both naked and not ashamed. Intimacy. First thing to go in a marriage, surprisingly to men, not to women, is sex. No woman wants to have sex with a jerk. Yeah. I'll ask the man, so what do you think the problem is in the marriage? He goes, my wife's frigid. I said, yeah, toward you. What have you done to her? Yeah, because they don't want to own it. Yeah. So I'd rather use God's design than necessarily any wisdom I might have about marriage. So those are the four critical things when I'm working with a couple in premarital. And I know Simbas, and they get to it one way or another, but don't, like actually define it. And, because why are you working on communication style and, you're working on the finances and your spiritual stuff and all that. You're looking at all the good things.
Sure.
I love Simas.
But understand why.
Yeah, Les and Leslie Parrott are awesome at saving your marriage before it starts, because people go, why is the name Simas? Saving your marriage before it starts. Oh, so creative. And, but again, I'm very passionate about those 4 cornerstones, to lock those down.
Conflict resolution, kind of explain that, of how you talk about that.
Yeah. So what's the number one complaint women have about their husbands?
They don't share their emotions. They don't talk to me.
Oh, you're the first woman that's ever said that.
Every single
Really?
woman.
Really?
No, I'm really saying that.
Okay.
Oh, Laura, I'm just shocked. Because
men
all
are
you women
just
go to
sharing-
the same school. Because here's what women look. They go to a school that we don't even know where it exists.
Yes.
But what they learn the laser eyes. Like you're at a party and you say something funny, you think it's funny, your wife doesn't think it's funny.
Yeah.
She looks, and I have to turn away because it burns brain cells. This is why women live longer than men. They're burning our brain cells.
Right.
Yeah. And so, but the number one complaint, my husband doesn't listen to me.
That's right.
Now, if he doesn't listen, then he doesn't understand.
Yeah.
And so in conflict resolution, here's the problem. We have male and female. And if we think males and females are the same, there's no way.
Yeah.
So here's the problem, is that men want to solve. Like the word male in the Bible is one who steps into and makes order out of chaos. So when a woman criticizes, why are you always trying to solve everything? Why are you trying to fix everything? Because I'm a man. That's what we do. So, but actually what happens is the man takes that role and he's not listening to his wife. Now the wife, on the other hand, and I'm going to ask you a question, Trevor, just to see see how you do on this one, because I like to put you on the spot.
Of course.
So do men use more words typically than women?
Oh no, women use way more words.
See, he got his right.
A+. A+.
He went to Masculinity University.
That's right.
There you go.
And so what the problem with women is, like, I'll sometimes be in my office and I'm working with a couple and I'll say, hey, tell me a little bit about your marriage. And the woman's been waiting for this moment.
Here it goes.
I don't know if you ever watched the old war movies, the Gatling gun.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just going, and the guy's going, but he's loading up his bazooka.
One big shot.
He's gonna get his opportunity. I go, well, you tell me about the marriage.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. In relationship, when there's a problem, women use too many words. Men try to solve. And what I tell men is if your wife is not listened to, she's not on your team. So I to my shame, I will never forget saying it. And I said it this way, because my wife and I had different views of money. And, they say money is the kind of the number one thing
Yeah,
that couples
fight about or whatever.
No, it's not the money, it's the control. See, I grew up in poverty. My wife grew up with abundance. And so she was a generous person. I was stingy. And so she would spend a lot of money for gifts and on her family and presents and things. And I remember this one time, I go, babe, listen to me. Spend less money than we make. Do it over a long period of time, and we're going to be just fine. Get it? Now, if Trevor said that to you in that tone,
You're so smart. I love that idea.
I had never thought of that.
That's right.
Yeah. So this is why so many couples do not resolve conflict. They don't have a modality that actually works. And so my wife and I created a way in which we resolve conflicts, and I train couples in it. Why? Because if you resolve the conflicts, you maintain the oneness.
Yeah.
You don't divorce somebody you're at peace with, like, honey, we've had too many good years.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
This is not.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, it's really fun because I do the marriage stuff, I don't charge, right? So if a couple complains, I go, you get what you pay for.
That's what we say.
But
We don't even work here.
yeah, but one of the things that you don't realize, and again, I don't want to be critical of the therapeutic community, but they have to be really careful about their motive and codependency. A couple comes desperate because their marriage is blowing open. Their kids are miserable. They're hurting. And so the couples, just come and help us save our marriage. Well, the therapist is coming going, I got a mortgage. I got a car payment.
It's true.
I need food. Yeah. And so they take the check, and then they go, well, that felt good. And then they'll take another, and they figure, well, we got to have about 27 clients to make ends meet. Yeah. And I go, man, you got to resist the temptation, that you're taking this money. But like I had this one couple, 11 years of counseling. And I asked them this question. Because I love your podcast, Tools for Marriage. I said, what's one tool that you walked away with that's changed your marriage? And literally they looked at me and I go, 11 years? One couple went through 8 therapists, 26 years of therapy. And they ultimately divorced. It just, because the resentment and bitterness was never taken care of. By the time they just kept going to therapists thinking, well, maybe he or maybe she.
Yeah, they're going to unlock it for us in
no,
some way. Yeah.
They had gotten so embittered and it was just over. And I hate to say it, too much water under the bridge. That's a horrible statement. But there was just too much resentment.
Yeah, I mean, that's with tools. That's what I really love, of just putting in something today. I mean, like you said, I think counseling is wonderful and stuff, but it's like, what can you change today? And I think even you talking about hardened heart, like, I'm not going to talk to you if both of you have hardened hearts. Like, let's work on this.
That's it. Well, imagine, you've been trying to work through a conflict, and, couples get to the point where they're in the conflict, and, it's in the second hour, and they're just exhausted. The man's just going, what are you saying? And my conflict resolution tool, I will literally go through it with a couple, have them read it before we meet. And then I said, we're going to use it like, have you ever been to Autopia at Disneyland when you're a kid? Okay. Like when you're a kid, you're thinking you're driving that car and that cement centerpiece. Yeah. So I tell them, I said, my wife and I, you can just have it in front of you, but if you'll follow the steps, the most important step is the one you learned in college, which is the fine art of mirroring. And it's where you actually listen to the other person and repeat back what they said. Like if my wife sends me to the store, there were a number of times, over the years, that I would get the wrong thing. Because I'm going to the store. Get Dove. Right. Well, I'd get the little one. She goes, I told you the big one, And so now what's kind of nice with cell phones, I take a picture. Is this what you want?
There you go.
But the important thing is I listen to her. And to mirror, you have to truly listen. And again, as a man, my wife's not on my team unless I really listen to her. If I'm about problem solving, I'm not listening. And remember in Philippians where Paul says, now consider the other person's interests as more important than your own. Typically when we're resolving conflict, we're thinking, what works for me?
I win.
Win, lose. But when she loses, you lose. So in the skill that I teach them, it's predicated on a spiritual battle. And prayer is not just a nice thing to do, because what is the purpose of the enemy? To kill, steal, and destroy. He's trying to drive a wedge. Well, when you got a conflict that is unresolved, he just goes, man, this is so good. And he will just drive it more and more until one day you go, we got to get this resolved. And so you pray because it's spiritual warfare. God, open up our eyes. Like in James in James 1 where he says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men generously and without reproach. Well, ask him, God, would you give us wisdom and insight into why we can't come together on this? God, would you give us the ability to listen to each other? And so then I train them how to express emotion and how to make short statements. It's harder for men to express emotions, so I have a thing called the feeling wheel. You've seen it. And when men look at it, they go, there's that many feelings.
I've had 3 of these. What are all these others for?
Exactly. Because there's 6 primary, then there's like 32 secondary, and then 38 or whatever tertiary. And so I'll have them start to get in touch with their feelings. Like I said, I want you to just go home, and if your wife says, hey, how was your day? I want you to be prepared to share a feeling. Because when a man says, I'm fine, That's the way a man says, shut up, I want to have a beer and sit on the couch. Yeah, I'm done. And, I found that out. But if I say, man, I was really perplexed today. She goes, what happened? Man, I had this meeting and da-da-da. She goes, well, what did they say? And now we're having a conversation. See, I'm bilingual. I speak English and womanese. Yeah, women's language, they use a lot of feelings. Yeah, and we don't. So I train men how to express feelings, but I have to train the woman to use less words. That's really hard because they want to share the whole narrative. Proverbs, it says, where there are many words, transgression is unavoidable. But he who restrains his lips is wise. So I have to train the woman to use less words, to make statements with feelings. And with the man, I've got to train him to use feelings. Because feelings are a signal to how serious something is. Like my wife used to be late to most everything because that's how her family was raised. Yeah. I was raised in a military home. You're 15 minutes early to everything. Yeah. Well, that marriage won't work. We had to resolve that conflict. Now, how did I resolve it? I'd stand behind her going, really? The whole world revolves around you, I guess. Or we'd get in the car and I have the kung fu grip on the steering wheel, cursing the day I ever married her. And we're not resolving anything. But when she was able to express to me, I feel dishonored because you don't understand how long it takes a woman to get ready. Oh. But I was able to say to her, it makes me angry when I try to encourage you to get ready and you laugh at me. You mock me and then you're late. See, those emotions are strong. So all of a sudden it wakes you up to, we can't keep doing this. And I will tell you on the issue of the time thing and the wisdom of God, my wife and I came up with something I don't think any couple does. And it just came out of when we were brainstorming. And all of a sudden I said, because she said, it exasperates me that you have to be on time for everything. Well, I had to repeat back what she had told me, her feelings with statements. Usually you use 3 to 5. And when I said it to her that she was exasperated that we had to be on time to everything, all of a sudden the Holy Spirit said, oh, why do I have to be on time for everything? I said, well, what if we had A, B, and C level activities? An A level, it's a wedding, I have to be on time. And I want us to ride together. And when I said that to her, she said, but if I'm running late, I'll drive separately. I said, you would do that? She goes, yeah. If I know you need to be on time. A B level, I don't mind being 15 minutes late, like to a dinner or whatever it might be. A C level, it doesn't matter. And we've used that for 40 plus years. Right. And now I'm not pacing, my heart racing, that kind of thing. So that's why conflict resolution is so important. But how you do it, your modality, because there's a friend of mine who has a organization called Relationship Lifeline.
We've been through it, yeah.
You've been through it. And what they talk about is if any argument is over 10, 15 minutes, it's history. In other words, you're getting triggered by old wounds. Conflict resolution keeps you focused, and usually you can resolve it within 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean about the tools of marriage. When you have certain tools, man, marriage works.
Yeah. There's something in there that I really liked, and that was that once you guys, heard one another, right? You had to repeat it back and sort of realize this thing. Then also you switch over into a much more creative mode. What can we do here, right? And I know as actors, one of the things that happens is when you're creative, when you're working together to try and find a solution, there's that chemical connection between the two of you, right? And so now you've switched from this sort of, fighting with one another to putting that issue out in front of you and saying, what can we do about this? And coming up with ideas together and then saying, well, let's give this a try, right? Not necessarily saying we need to carve this in stone, but let's see if this works. And you said, hey, this ABC worked.
But I'm gonna dig down a little deeper. Yeah. It's resolving it for her. I'll give you on that thing of time. When she said, it hurts me when you get in the car and you won't even talk to me. And in the brainstorming, I said, I will never, no matter what, not talk to you. That is abuse. And see, because I was solving the problem for her. When you think of what would work for her, and she's thinking about what would work for you, when she offered, to drive if she was running late, and then we said, hey, if we've got a couple we're going to go to dinner with, and she said, if I'm more than 15 minutes late, why don't you go ahead of me, take a picture of the menu, order for me, but you can be with the couple so they're not just sitting by themselves wondering where we are.
Yeah.
And I'm just going, she offered that. Why? Because I listened to her. She didn't just come out of that on her own. It's because we're working this thing together.
Right. Yeah, that's great too, because you're thinking, okay, I know what the issue is. At least, I've heard it and at least expressed it back to her so that she's like, yes, you actually heard me, right? Now we're moving into this sort of creative element of trying to come up with a solution for it, which is a guy thing, right? We want to sort of solve this, but thinking about how do I solve this for her,
That's
right?
it.
And so I'm putting her needs first rather than how do I solve this for me?
Do you think when you do it God's way that He honors you?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
See, that's the thing. That's why I love pastoral counseling, is that the Bible is rich and it's active and it cuts through the bone and marrow. And when you use the principles, it's like, oh, these actually work.
Yeah.
Here's one, because we're talking about tools, right?
Yeah.
So, what's in your toolbox? Well, one of the tools that most couples don't have is protecting covenant relationship. Well, in Exodus chapter 20, you're familiar with the Ten Commandments?
Yeah.
Do you remember the first one? There's a Bible test.
Yeah.
You shall have no other gods before me, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. We need to be jealous in our covenant. There is a healthy jealousy that is about protecting the legacy, protecting what God has brought together. But how many couples do you know have written down a covenant, protecting covenant relationship? And I deal with this all the time, and I have them put together a written covenant. Because how many times do I have, whether, I don't care if it's familially, here's a part of my wife and I, and she has been unbelievable in this area. Her family is very close, and so I said when we got married, hey, I don't want you talking about if our marriage is struggling, or I don't want you to ever talk about our sexual relationship, or if we have money problems, because I don't want to take any money from your family. She's never done that. That's protecting covenant relationship, for me. And it's not just because I'm a pastor, but I can't even be accused. I am absolutely protective of where I'm at and who I'm with and what I'm doing. So my wife gets my schedule every day. She knows I'm here. She knows the address. If she called me, it's an emergency, but she knows who I'm with, what I'm doing, and where I'm at all times. Right. She can look into my electronic devices. No pornography, no room for that. And so most couples never have a protecting covenant relationship. And then all of a sudden what happens is their marriage gets attacked and they're shocked that they're hurting. They're shocked that they're angry. Like, why would you even take, I can't believe you counseled that woman. Yeah. And I had one guy who, the husband and wife, the day before he was at the Angel game, and the kiss cam came on, and he was with a woman from work, and they kissed. And his wife was watching the game. It wasn't good. He kept looking at me like, yeah, I know, I'm stupid.
Stupid on the jumbotron level, my friend.
Exactly.
Gosh.
And I can't judge him. I can't, because I've had my moments in which I didn't think through where I was at, who I was with, what I was doing. So, but again, you never assume anything in marriage. You write it down. You say, this is what I'm going to do to protect our covenant relationship. So that's also one of the key tools that I help couples put together. Yeah. Especially if there's been any kind of betrayal.
Right. Yeah. So this is usually couples not in the pre-marriage stage, but couples that are...
No, I actually say in the premarital, I said, who's protecting your relationship? It's like self-management. When you're an individual, self-management is your number one responsibility. If you burn out, that's on you. If you sit, that's on you. You take personal responsibility. When you're in marriage, it is your responsibility to protect it. Yeah. I mean, you lock your doors. I remember when my wife, at our first house, she goes, I want to have an alarm. And we had no money. I was in seminary. And I go, we can't afford that. She goes, do you ever worry about getting raped? That's a hard question to answer. No.
Yeah.
You ever worry about getting, attacked? No. Well, I do.
That's right.
I went, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if I'm willing to protect that, well, what about other things, other intrusions? And if you don't think, because I do deliverance ministry, and I always tell people I've been walking with God for 52 years, but I've also been walking with Satan. And so what he looks for is the cracks. Where is this couple vulnerable? Because you got to ask yourself, what are demons doing all day? They're not down at the beach sipping, pina coladas. They're looking for
Prowling
any
around.
foolishness that you have, any weakness, in your armor, and then they go after it, and they tempt, they accuse, whatever it may be. So if you don't protect your covenant relationship, so even with premarital, I encourage that.
How do you counsel couples to try to make certain that prayer together and individually, and the reading of the scripture and attending church and serving together is a core part of their marriage, of an important part of their marriage?
Yeah, I don't think it's important at all. You're really going to ask a pastor that question?
I'm saying you can tell them, right? That's one thing, but then
but here's what
you want it to sink deep, right?
Right, and I keep it simple, and Simbas has that section on spiritual walk. And so what I will ask them is, okay, tell me in the first month that you're married, what's the rhythm spiritually for you guys? Because I don't assume anything, because everybody's spiritual experience and walk and passion. Like my wife is incredibly devoted. She was a Christian long before I was. And she came to Christ at age 5. I can only imagine her prayer of confession. Oh God, I pooped my diaper when I was 3. I drank way too much formula. There wasn't a whole lot of sin in her life. And I always referred to her as the 4th member of the Trinity, because she never drank, never smoked, didn't dance, never wore, skirts above her knee, because she went to a Christian school, never let a guy touch her. She told me a story. I just was blown away. She was her family house was in a cul-de-sac. She went out with this guy, and as they're heading out the cul-de-sac, he put his hand just on her leg, and she goes, "Hey, I need you to take me home." And he thought, "Well, did you forget something?" She goes, "No, you just put your hand on my leg." He goes, "Well, I'm sorry." She goes, "Take me home." There's a chaste, godly, holy woman. Yeah, and then she marries me, drug addict, drug dealer, womanizer, thief, liar. Why?
AMG Gremlin as well,
the
don't
AMC
forget.
Gremlin. But it was a 59 Rambler Nash before that. But again, what I would say is that's her, and for me, I'm I love technical aspects of the faith. I love getting into etymology, into word study. I love to break down syntax and sentence, and so I study God's word differently than her. Now prayer, oh my gosh, I can listen to her pray all day. Oh, she's a prayer warrior. Wow. And so praying together is really easy. Yeah. She prays for me. And you guys know the statistical data on prayer. Yeah. Literally, it's huge. Divorce is nil. Because, and by the way, kind of an interesting thing. I've only heard one message on this verse in 1 Corinthians 7. It's the verse every husband wants his wife to memorize. Do you know which one it is? Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to share it with Trevor. He's going to want you to memorize it.
Okay.
The woman's body is made for the man, and the man's body is made for the woman.
Right.
Quit denying each other in this matter, except for what?
For fasting and prayer.
For the cause of prayer.
Yeah.
God puts sexual intimacy on the same plane as prayer. How does that play out?
Right, yeah.
When Deb and I lost our first child in miscarriage, devastating. I wasn't thinking about sex. I was just crushed. Prayer was the greatest need. Prayer is one of the most intimate things. So it's not just sexuality that goes in marriage when a marriage goes bad. It's prayer. I've never had a couple where they had a problem and I go, "Are you guys praying for each other?" No.
Yeah.
Why? I'm so angry. You don't pray with somebody you're bitter at.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yet if you would confess your own sin, you remember James 5, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another. Guess who's healed? I'm healed. I'm healed in my confession. I'm healed in my praying.
Yeah.
But couples don't do that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I have women my age, and they feel uncomfortable praying with their husband. They feel like that is so intimate.
And so what would you do? You say, get over yourself. You're making it about you, not about him. This isn't about you.
Yeah.
This is about him. He needs you to pray.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like when people, I've done hundreds of memorials, and somebody, I'll say to maybe the dad who died, I'll say to the son, hey, you going to share about your dad? No, I'm not going to get up there. I said, why? He goes, I'd fall apart. I go, this isn't about you. This is about your dad. And it's your, it's about you honoring your dad. And so many times in marriage, we're in our own head. It's about us. And, even like I remember when I got married, I thought, oh, it's just sex every day. And it was for 4 years. No, it wasn't that way. Yeah. But the spiritual aspect is one of the first things to go. But with a new couple, what I want to do is figure out what their rhythm is, praying in the Word. And then I'll talk, I was with a couple last week on Thursday, and I said, let's talk about the rhythm. They're going to church together. They're in a couple study. He's in a men's study, she's in a women's study, and they serve together. I go, okay. I said, you're in the right rhythm.
Yeah.
Because my wife and I have always been in a married couple. Like we have a couple, a couples group we've been with 27 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And we've raised our kids together. Yeah. We're now empty nest. Now they're boomeranging. Yeah. And we're all talking about how much money you help your adult children with.
Right.
And, yeah. Right. Which leads me to something. The idea of a couple study being at church, every couple that I deal with, 9 times out of 10, they're not in community. In other words, they only have their marriage, and they think they're the only crazy couple that fights about what we talked about that last night, and they're not. Yeah. When they finally realize there's other couples, it's like Relationship Lifeline. Couples will go to that and go, we're all right. Yeah. We're going to make it. Right. Because that couple, they're really it's like if everybody put their problems into a circle, which problems would you take?
Right.
Yours.
Exactly.
Yeah. I talked to couples. I know early when we first were pre-married, it was like, we're scared to talk about it. But it is like so much with church, it seems like sex bad. And then all of a sudden, have fun. And we don't really talk
sex,
about
good.
Good. And like you said, I think a lot of times for women, there has been things in the past. And so trying to bring that into relationship and that safety, and that it isn't all just about the sex, it's about intimacy. I think it's about
the conversation, the building memories.
Right.
And my wife and I wanted to have spiritual authority with our kids, and like there's the old adage in life, do I want to be a powerful example or a horrific warning? And see, good. I think we were a powerful example because when it came to our intimacy, we just watched where we were. And when people say, well, how far is too far physically in a dating engagement? I said, if you can't do it in public, don't do it. Ooh. Yeah. So we held to that standard. Yeah. But again, on the spiritual walk, I would never encourage a couple not to serve together, not to pray together. No. Yeah. It's a very important thing. So here's the question, because you keep asking me questions. I get to ask you questions. Right. So here's my question. What's marriage? We talked about it a little bit. What is it?
Covenant.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay. So have you ever met a cohabiting couple that's dating and sleeping with other people?
No.
So there's an implied covenant. Yeah. Marriage is covenant.
Yeah.
And they've just done it wrong. And because any cohabiting couple, I do ask, where was God in your decision? It's like when people tell me they're going to leave California, and I go, how did God lead you to that decision? Yeah. They just want to get out because they hate the government, they hate the taxes. I'm going, so this is God's plan or is this yours? And see, no cohabiting couple has ever said, well, God told us to move in together. They'll tell me the reasons. Yeah. And by the way, the number one reason, what do you think it might be?
Money.
Money is one of them, but sometimes it's for intimacy, right? No. Uh-oh. Fear.
Yeah. See, they've never seen a healthy marriage. And they'll tell me money. I said, so God can't provide for you? Really? Yeah, you're going to be on the street? No. It's fear. See, most couples in their own family or looking out the horizon don't see healthy marriages. So they think, and this is the lie of Satan, is that if we live together, we'll see if this works. Then we'll get married. That makes total sense. But what are you doing? You're sowing distrust. You're saying to your partner, you know what? I don't know that you're really as good as I think you are. I'm going to test this out. You're sowing distrust. That's why the divorce rate with cohabiting couples is 25% greater than not. And so they're sabotaging what could be a very healthy marriage. And again, because marriage is a skill. So if they're saying, well, they're afraid of, by the way, when they tell me every excuse, I go, no, you're afraid. And I'll dig in, and it's 99% of the time it's fear.
Fear.
And not trusting God, and which is kind of one and the same. Let me ask you this: when you got married, you had a license, right? How long ago was that?
Yeah, 29 years ago.
Oh, you guys are rookies.
Youngsters.
Just newly,
29 years.
yeah.
You know, isn't it funny when you say like you've been married over 20 years or 25? People, oh!
Right, everyone
And
applauds.
I think you heard me last night. I said I usually will tell a crowd, I go, no applause necessary. Half the time I was asleep. And 80% of the time I was awake, I was at work. I've really only been with her 3 years out of 45.
That's really good.
If you really look at it.
Good. Yes.
But it's really true.
Yeah.
But anyway, where were we now? When did the marriage really begin?
That's
When they moved in together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, I've never met the couple where the wife goes, yeah, you go out and play with other women. You go out and have the nightlife. And
Right.
yeah, I'll just be at home cleaning. And,
Yeah.
That's
So
fascinating.
anyway, cohabiting is a big challenge.
Yeah.
But understanding what marriage is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is great.
Well, I know we've had lots of questions, a few rabbit trails there. Are there other things that you wanted to talk about? Other causes that you're passionate about, or other things that you might want to say to couples?
My good looks.
Yeah,
I want
of
to
course.
talk about that.
Let's talk about it. There's one thing I just want to say. I appreciate your authenticity and I appreciate your humor.
Yes.
It's so, it really is refreshing, and it's so disarming, and yet there's things about which we don't joke around, and yet there's so much that we can.
Joy.
And I just love that sense of joy and that sense of fervor. And I just love too that you're, the decision, because we know a little bit of your story, to just say, I'm going to just keep running the race well, and you're doing that. And I'm so proud. And your story is, is impactful, because it's not I'm a pastor and I'm above you and I've not been there or whatever. It's like, no, man, I've messed up and I've done this and I've done this. And you can sniff out when someone's lying to you. It's like, come on, man, and I just love that.
Well, and there's an axiom I've always operated from: you can't lead somebody where you haven't been. Most every malady I'm dealing with a couple, I've struggled, and so again, what I always tell couples, like when I first meet with them, what I say is I tell them my story, quick version of my wife and I separating, almost losing my marriage. I said, let me tell you, I can't judge you. Second thing I'm not going to do is I don't take sides. You both are 100% responsible for what you've done. Yeah. Even when there's been an affair. Again, you can explain an affair. You don't excuse it. So I don't let the quote unquote innocent spouse who didn't have the affair go, I've done nothing. Oh no, you've done some things. Yeah. And so there's certain things you learn as you're in the trenches that you can't learn in a book. You have to just be day in and day out doing this stuff. And that way there's a confidence you build, not a cockiness. Again, I don't change a heart. I only require the couple be humble. I can't make them humble.
Yeah.
But the most valuable commodity you have is your time. You can never replace it. So you never work with a couple that's stubborn. Argumentative,
right?
Yeah, and not humble, and so that's why I love this work, and it's all too about legacy. See, without them knowing it, sometimes I'll ask the couple to bring me a picture of their kids, and I'll put it up and I go, that's what we're fighting for. Don't give up, because again, if there's nothing that is in marriage that should ever cause a divorce, then let's figure out what it is. Yeah. And that's why the remarriages, those are the ones that are special because there's now 4 couples at Mariners. I'll see them walk into the worship center and I'm just going, wow, God, this is so cool. And, sometimes their kids will go, you're doing what? You're going to remarry? What? And they'll be invited to the wedding and, they're just going, whatever. And I look forward to the first time that we get to actually do a video at Mariners of a couple that remarried, because it will stun the audience, and it may cause other couples, or thinking about divorce.
Right.
Maybe we don't have to.
Yeah.
So I would, I know you guys do a lot of premarital, and I hope you're in the trenches with tough couples.
Yeah.
We need more people. The Don Quixote line. Marching into hell for a heavenly cause.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. And by the way, I've only had death threats from working with tough marriages.
You've had death?
Oh yeah. One guy I had to get a restraining order. He violated. He was going to kill my family, and he ended up going to prison. Wow. And what's the number one call that police don't want?
Yeah, it's
domestic violence.
Yeah.
And so people that work in the restore side, like there's one lady that just hates me at church. Every time she sees me, she spits on the ground. I've run into her in the store because I basically told her if she divorces, she's going to lose the house. She's only going to get joint custody. She told her husband he'll never see the kids again. Yeah. And I just corrected her, and she got mad. And it's still true. They lost the house. Yeah. He's got joint custody, and she didn't. She said, "I'm going to take all your money." No, you're going to get 50%. Yeah. So anyway, it's tough work. It's at times dangerous work. It's hard work. But man, the greater the prize, the greater the price you got to pay.
Yeah.
And so I'm incredibly privileged to walk into this stuff. Yeah.
So last night we went to an event. So talk more about that ministry.
Oh gosh,
it's wonderful.
Standing Stone is it just rocks. Debbie and Jim Hogan, who really created it, saw what was happening to pastors. And by the way, pastoral marriages are some of the hardest because you have to have an image.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
Everything's who do I talk to if my marriage is unraveling? Yeah. That will be safe and not tell the elder board or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And so they started Standing Stone to support pastoral marriages. And now they've got 300 couples and individuals who help thousands of pastors and regain, and restore and renew and rebuild their marriages. It's a beautiful ministry.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and my friends Jeremy and Jerusha Clark, beautiful marriage, great couple who are now heading it up. Wonderful transition from Deb and Jim to them.
Yeah. And Jerusha was the one who said that she was, I think, 13 years old and you did her baptism when she was like in junior high or something. Yeah. And then she said you were the one who did their wedding and you ended up signing off on that marriage license. I think that's beautiful.
I have no problem being reminded how old I am. There are 4 kids at Mariners. And I remember the first one came up to me and she was 4 years old. She goes, "My grandpa was in your youth group." I go, "That's not possible." I said, "Where's your dad?" And then I look at the dad and I could see the face of who his dad is. I go, "No way." There's 4 kids there. Either the grandmother or grandfather were in my youth group.
Oh my goodness.
And you stay around long enough, you're old.
Yeah.
I have no hard time believing that.
But that's just amazing. And I just, again, one of the things that I just really appreciate is this idea of, you saying, I want to run the race strong, and I think about people and I think about, just the storing up treasures in heaven, right? The work that we're doing, which sometimes can be hard, sometimes can be very joyous, and sometimes you don't see the fruits of everything that you're doing, right? We don't sometimes get to see that loop closure on this side, But I know that, to stand before the Lord one day and just have him say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant."
Well, the seeing is the mind's eye, is that you imagine. See, it's like when you're generous and you give to something. Yeah. There's going to be this multiplied impact because you were generous. I remember this kid that I got to do his wedding, and I said, "Why'd you choose the chapel?" And he started crying. So when I was a high schooler, right, in this place on this floor, I wrote a prayer that God would bring a godly woman and I would get married. And I got to do his wedding. Wow. That's paying it forward. That's seeing the multiplying effect. And now they have 2 kids. They're at Mariners. And it just, if you see the multiplied effect, you fight through the difficulty. You know, like my ministry verse is 1 Corinthians 15:58. Because marriage work, by the way, I don't set other people up and say, oh, it's so easy. Oh, it's so fun. It is fun. It can be easy, but there is hardship. And Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 15:58, be steadfast, immovable, always abound in the work of the Lord, knowing that your toil is not in vain in the Lord. And so I just keep toiling. And again, what a privilege it is. And I just wish more couples would be humble and step into the pain and restore, renew, and rebuild their marriages.
Yeah.
The pain that you see is just, it's the ripple effect of it is so damaging, I think, to the couple and then to the kids and everyone around them. So
because something I'll say to couples that's ready to quit, I said, now let me just share with you. Your spouse is the sharpest tool God has in his shed to make you more like Jesus. Are you going to walk away from that? Yeah, because again, my wife is a truth teller, and there were things that had to change. And there's things that had to change in her. But man, you walk away and you think, I'm gonna get rid of the stress. Right. I'm gonna be able to make my own decisions. Yeah, but you're never gonna become the person God wants you to be by leaving.
Yeah.
Now I know if there's addiction and a person won't get sober. I know if there's mental health and the person won't get diagnosed, won't get on. I understand, but I can walk with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We can get that done. And so I'm not just willy-nilly. Every marriage works, but most couples quit way too quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One real quick, with pornography, we see that's a big one. And so kind of like, how do you kind of counsel going through that? Because I know that's a big problem, and how to kind of get
that goes back to the protecting covenant relationship. Because in today's culture, oftentimes pornography, like I had one wife who she started having her husband watch porn because their sex life was kind of dry, and she thought that would stimulate him toward her. Just the opposite. Yeah. And so there's unfortunately, pornography has been normalized. So what they have to do is look at it. When Jesus said, you've heard it was said, you should not commit adultery. But I say to you, if you even look upon another woman, you've committed the very act. That's pornography. Like Job, one of the surprising verses in chapter 31, he says, I purposed in my heart not to defile myself by looking upon another young woman. When you get older, you as a man, you want to know, am I still attractive? Are women still, digging on me? Which is a stupid thing to be thinking, but you do. And so Job admitted to lusting. But he purposes, it has to be an intentional drive to protect the covenant relationship. Pornography, it's the most offensive thing a man can do to a woman, because he's saying to her, you're not enough. Yeah. And I think for all of us as men, whether it's lust in our minds, fantasy or pornography, we violated. But that's why holiness, purity is an aspiration, not a destination. It's very different. See, you have to be on your guard. Yeah. Again, the enemy is going to throw out. And so it's got to be something that more men than women, but because some women do as well. And but it has to be something that you realize it's an offense to the marriage.
Continually transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? It's something that you need to continue to.
Well, you guys, let's stay at it, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Whoever's listening to this, what is shared on this podcast stays in this podcast.
I see so.
Yeah.
So hopefully this was really valuable, but please don't share it with anyone.
Well, a friend of mine said, hey, I'll be confidential as long as the people I tell don't say anything. Right. So remember, confidentiality.
Yes, that's right.
And my wife's name is not Debbie.
Oh, okay. Names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Exactly. Thank you, guys.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate it. Yes, God bless you. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Tools for Marriage. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for listening.
Please subscribe or follow to get notified with each new episode of the Tools for Marriage podcast.
We're cheering you on.